Hey, what's going on with shipping? Sal Mercogliano here. We have some breaking news coming out of North Bergen and Lindenhurst, New Jersey. As you know, the International Longshoremen Association and the U.S. Maritime Alliance have been meeting, and we're getting a signal now from their headquarters. We are seeing the white smoke come from the building that indicates for us that an agreement has reached. That's right. The ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance have an agreement. The U.S. East and Gulf Coast port strikes have been avoided. The crowd bursting into cheers, flags from all around the world, obviously, because it's the International Longshoremen's Association. This is such an epic, epic day in history. The piazza there in Lindenhurst and North Bergen just teeming with people. On behalf of the legal team here at What's Going On with Shipping, it's important to note that that was not the ILA USMX contract negotiation site. That was actually the election of a pope taking place in the Vatican. We now return you back to our normal scheduled program. Is that really necessary? I mean, you don't think people know that there's no piazzas in North Bergen and Lindenhurst, New Jersey? Oh, hi. That's right. Huge news coming out yesterday that the ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance has negotiated a settlement to the strike. Go right over here to the story from Mike Schuller. The International Longshoremen Association and the U.S. Maritime Alliance have successfully negotiated a tentative 6-year master contract preventing potential major supply chain disruptions at East and Gulf Coast ports. The agreement comes just days before the next week's critical January 15th deadline and follows a period of uncertainty after a 3-day strike in October that ended with a tentative agreement on wage increases, a temporary contract extension. The contentious issue of port automation, however, had remained unresolved. You may remember, did a video last week where I talked about kind of 3 options for this strike. Number one, we talked about they would have a deal, and I put a lot of emphasis on I thought they would have a deal. Second, a strike. I said the odds of having a strike were very low, about 10%. And then the third was there could be an extension. And I was leaning more toward that extension as the negotiations were going on. However, I started hearing very early on, a couple of days ago, from ILA members, from U.S. Maritime Alliance members, that a deal was at hand. And actually 2 days before, I knew the deal was done, but I had not been able to get confirmation or details about it. I released it yesterday, and then the news broke. Let's take a look at the joint statement that was put out by the 2 groups. The ILA and the USMX have reached a tentative agreement on all items for a new 6-year master plan. The 2 sides agreed to continue to operate under the current contract until the union can meet with its full wage scale committee and schedule a ratification vote, and USMX members can ratify the terms of the final contracts. There is an up and down vote by the by the ILA. It has to go out to the locals, to the unions in the 14 ports. They have to vote on it, and then, of course, the U.S. Maritime Alliance members must vote on it. The quote here from both sides: "We are pleased to announce that we've reached a tentative agreement on the new contract subject to ratification, thus averting any work stoppage. This agreement protects current ILA jobs, establishes a framework for implementing technologies that will create more jobs while modernizing East and Gulf Coast ports, making them safer and more efficient, and creating the capacity they need to keep our supply chains strong. This is a win-win agreement that creates ILA jobs, supports American consumers and businesses, and keeps the American economy the key hub of the global marketplace." I did not believe there was going to be a strike for a couple of reasons. When the strike took place back in October, I had heard about it way back in June. There was already rumblings among the union members about it at the time. We also knew it was going to be a short-term strike. Why? Because the ILA did not have a strike fund. So we knew it was going to be a short-term strike. In this case, we did not hear rumblings from the unions about the potential for a strike. More importantly, both the ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance wanted to get a deal in place before the Trump administration comes in. Now, we know that the Trump administration had been very vocal in siding with the ILA. You had the visit of Harold and Dennis Daggett with President-elect Trump down at Mar-a-Lago, and you had a phone call from President Trump to the U.S. Maritime Alliance telling them to work out a deal. It's interesting to note that during this negotiation, no one from the Biden administration was present. You may remember at the last agreement that came, well, not agreement, but the resolution to the first strike, Julie Su, who had been the acting Secretary of Labor, had played a very vocal part in this. There was no participation from the Biden administration, I am hearing, and they wanted to get this in place before the Trump administration came in. Even though Trump is on the side of the ILA, he does waver at times, and he's not always been the most pro-union guy in the world. One of the interesting things that came out during this period was a story by Lorianne LaRocco over at G Captain and CNBC that talked about this kind of reality check and the inside debate over automation at America's ports. And this story had to deal specifically with the port of Virginia. This chart out of Port Economics shows you U.S. ports, container ports around the country. You'll notice that fully automated ports are only located here on the West Coast, the TRAPAC terminal, APM terminal, that's Maersk, and then the Long Beach container terminal. There's a new planned one here at TTI. But on the East Coast, the only place you see automation is semi-automation in the Virginia ports, up in Bayonne, and there's actually plans for another one in Baltimore coming in. But it was the Virginia terminals that had the big issue because they are bringing in more cranes to be used for these automatic stacking cranes. And so even though that automation had been locked in the 2018 agreement, there was some issues coming in with it. And it appears as if the Port of Virginia talked about this to Lorianne LaRocco. It created a little bit of consternation among the U.S. Maritime Alliance members. It really kicked them into overdrive to kind of get this deal worked out. This is the statement from Harold Daggett, the president of the ILA, talking about the support that he had from President Trump and the efforts that were done to bring about the agreement. But the statement I really want to show you is this one from his son. This is from Dennis Daggett, who's the executive vice president. Thrilled to announce we've reached a historic landmark master contract. Goes on, after extensive complex agreement that required thorough review to avoid any mistakes in authorship, the next steps include presenting the contract to the wage scale committee. We're hearing that the enacting of the 62% wage increase, which was staggered over the 6-year contract, may be upped a bit. Initially, we were looking at about a 6-7% increase. It may be more in the first year of the contract, after which the local unions will report back to their members before a ratification vote takes place. I urge everyone to trust the process as we move forward. To ensure transparency and understanding, we are also preparing a detailed video that will break down every aspect of the new agreement for each local and its members. This contract represents all crafts and is designed to benefit every member of the ILA. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our international president for his unwavering strength, nice of him to compliment his dad, and relentless fight during these negotiations. So we don't have a lot of details on the specifics yet. Obviously, they're trying to keep this close hold. It's going out to the locals and to the operating companies. But the big thing is we averted a strike that was slated to happen on January 15th. Remember, that's a Wednesday next week. The strike probably would have been a very short-term strike, probably very similar to what we saw back in October, a couple of days, because you have inauguration on January 20th. But pretty clear that both sides wanted to hammer this out, have it in place, and get going. Now, is the agreement in place? No, it's not in place yet. They have a tentative agreement, meaning both sides have to ratify it, but no one foresees any issues here, particularly because it appears that, number one, they've gotten the pay raise locked in, the 62%. They may actually have more of that pay raise up front than they expected. The container royalties are not going to be split. What we're hearing right now is that 100% of the container royalties, each time a container gets moved, goes to the ILA, doesn't get split between the ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance. The automation that's going in Bayonne, in Virginia, and in Baltimore will go in. So, you know, when Daggett sat there and said no automation, that's negotiation. That's you draw your line in the sand. And obviously there was some discussion about it because, again, if you go back and look at the 2018 contract, there was automation in there. I don't know why anybody didn't go back and look at that, but it was in there. So what we have is an agreement. All the attacks against the ILA for being Luddites, for you know, holding up America, what you have here is a bargaining agreement between a union and a series of companies, shipping lines, port terminals, marine terminal operators, and they're able to hammer out a deal. This is exactly what you want. And the ILA membership gets themselves a deal whereby they can now give their members an insured pay raise, some more protection for them, and that is significant to the 85,000 members who work in the docks from Houston, Texas, all the way up to Boston, Massachusetts. So we'll bring you more details as it is released. I hope to get another insider view of these negotiations, maybe try to entice some people to come on and talk about this. I think it would be a really interesting kind of behind the scenes to hear what happened. But we will keep you posted. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and our comedy routine here at What's Going On with Shipping. I should tell you now, we have no legal department here. Shipping. It's me. It's all there is me. There's nothing here. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to be alerted about new videos when they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, give it a big thumbs up, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit that super thanks button down below, or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Until our next video or next major labor strike, which could be around the corner, this is Sal, signing off.